You're listening to No Plot, Only Lore, a podcast about games and the tables we play them at. Your DMs tonight and every night are Josh and Chris. You can find us on all podcast platforms or check us out at noplotonlylore.com. If you like what you hear today, please rate and review the show and share it with everyone you've ever met. Welcome back to No Plot, Only Lore, coming to you straight from Lazental, the city of smiths. Do you need something made of metal? Well, come to Lazental. Somebody probably knows how to make it here. Have you ever been to Lazental?
I didn't even know Lazental existed until that sentence.
Yeah. It is on the southeast of Faerun in a country or area that I had never heard of called La Palia.
What? I know these are all real things you're saying because you wouldn't just lie to me, but
that's not true. I would absolutely just lie to you, but I'm not lying to you about this.
Okay, well, I'm just saying none of this sounds like real things to me, and I'm just kind of hoping for the best, I guess.
I think my favorite thing about this, so when we started doing this, I actually went to the Forgotten Realms fandom wiki.
Okay.
To get a list of small towns that we could be the favorite D&D podcast of.
Why small towns though?
I just thought it was funnier than doing big cities, the deep cuts, right?
Right. Okay.
I'm sure Lazental has been mentioned in one R.A. Salvatore book from 1998.
Okay. All right. Okay. Go on. Continue.
But so we've got Lazental, known as the City of Smiths, and I was scrolling down a little bit to see what was up with this place. It has a population of 925 people.
That's okay.
That's
Isn't that
not
bigger than
city.
the town you grew up in?
No, that is smaller than Stettler. Stettler has about 5,300 people, if you count the cats. But
good for them, because that's a lot less than I thought they had.
Stettler?
Yeah.
It's not a lot. Yeah, Stettler's a small spot.
That's wow. Because I guess I've never actually been to Stettler. I just interact with Stettler from afar, and so I just kind of assume. Yeah. I kind of assumed, because my kids have gone there for sports stuff, because that's what happens when you're in Alberta. I just kind of assumed they were I don't know, reasonably sized, but no, that's terrible.
10,000-ish. 10, 20. Yeah, no. 5,300 people. It was last when I was growing up there. It was almost 5,000 when I was growing up there. And
Huh.
Absolutely one of those towns where you can't take a shit without everybody knowing what color it is. It's such a weirdly close-knit community.
I think that is the thing I hate the most about small town Alberta is that is one of my most valued possessions is my privacy.
And Stettler is a gossipy place.
Yeah.
One time, so this was a weird thing that happened to me when I was still working at the store.
Okay.
Somebody from Stettler who I recognized came in, and he and I were talking, and he actually recognized me back. He was like, "Hey, are you from Stettler?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm Sandra and Chris O'Hara's boy." And they were like, "Oh, your mom is weird." And I was like, "Yeah, but you can't say it." Do we have to fight now? I feel like we have to fight now.
I like that person a lot. You can take him out of Stettler, but you can't take the Stettler out of them. Holy cow.
God damn. Just flat out. Oh yeah, your mom's a weirdo. I mean, but
I love yourself, that. I love that your mom has a reputation around Stettler, and it's just for kind of being a little bit different, slightly outsider, but automatically. Oh, that's the weirdo. Okay.
Don't get me wrong. I understand that my mom is the apple did not fall far from the tree. I understand the weirdo that is my mom, and I love her for that and with that 1,000%.
Right.
But you can't just be throwing down about somebody's mom at their place of work.
No, I love the boldness of that. The confidence to just be like, yeah, that's the weird guy, and I'm going to tell him that right now, despite every social convention I've ever been raised with.
I think I would have been in my rights to, like, cold cock him with a thing. I feel like the social conventions of that experience are like, yeah, no, I'm just allowed to hit that guy with a book nail. Like,
oh, I'm glad you didn't, because then
me too.
But yeah, oh god, never mind. I love small towns because they raise just like, and so maybe it makes me wonder if like there's a lot of people who are like going around as like undiagnosed autistic because that's just like small town behavior.
Oh yeah,
like no one else is going to be
like,
that kind of honest with you, right?
I would hope. Like, I hope that is evidence of some sort of like neurodivergence, or maybe it's just me being the fucking weird one. Like I've got a neurodivergence myself, so like maybe it's normal to just show up at somebody's work and tell them that their mom is weird.
I can fairly confidently say it's not normal, but it's still funny.
It is really funny. Yeah. Anyway,
and also like it from maybe I'm reading his tone wrong from your explanation of it, but it sounds like he didn't even mean it in a mean way.
It was definitely just an observation. Like,
yeah.
There was some value judgment that came with it, I think, just in the thing he said, right? Like, right. You can't say that in a way that isn't like mildly insulting.
Right.
But
right.
There was definitely like oh yeah, no, I know your mom. She's
the weird one.
It's like the only descriptor I have in my head for this human being that we both know. She's sweet. She's kind. She's talkative. She is friendly. There's a lot of things that you can say about my mom. My mom is a lovely woman. But no, the first and only thing that stuck in this guy's head was, oh yeah, no, she's fucking weird.
I love it. All of the things that she has done in that community and for that community have been erased by her just like oddness.
To be fair, a lot of the things that she has done in and for that community have been fairly odd. I get it.
Yeah.
It's just don't fucking come into my house and tell me.
There's no way to stop her. She's going to continue to be odd. You just have to know.
Yeah, but like, keep it to yourself, bro.
Oh man,
fuck.
That's
anyway.
That's the best. That's just the best.
I'm surprised I never told you that story before.
No, it's never once come up. Like, hey, remember the time a guy came to my job and insulted my mom for no reason? Yeah.
He didn't even fucking buy anything either.
He walked in on a mission. Yeah. I've been trying to track. I've been trying to hunt this man down.
Yeah.
Oh god. Okay. Anyways,
let's talk about role playing games.
Yeah, odd moms aside.
That actually brings a bit of context to the earlier intros. We were like, my mom's favorite D&D podcast is like because she won't
listen to it. She's just the kind of weirdo who would raise someone like you.
Yes. Let's talk about role playing games.
Okay, let's do. Oh god.
So I started today looking at some of the like D&D 5.5 stuff that's been coming out. And
yeah, I officially got our pre-order notification for all this stuff this week, so I've been investigating it myself as well because I don't know, I want to know what the difference was.
Yeah, and I started putting together notes for this episode thinking that it was going to be like an additions episode where we just kind of like go into all of the editions of D&D and like the history of it. And as I was doing that, I realized that like some of the stuff that I actually wanted to talk about was more complexity. and like how we approach complexity
in
in role-playing games. Where
Sure.
like, because D&D 5e is not the most inherently complex D&D,
Yeah, that's fair.
but it's not complex.
I mean, yeah, it's complex compared to like a board game, but like compared to like other versions of role playing games, it's not particularly complex.
I mean, it's no Fatal.
I don't know what Fatal
where you're
is.
like, Fatal is one of the unholy trinity of role playing games. That was the one where you could roll for vaginal girth.
Sorry?
Yep.
Hey,
dick length was a stat that you could roll for in this game.
That's a combination of words I never wanted to have.
And yet they're in your ears and you're going to know them forever now. Yeah, it was touted as being like the most realistic role-playing game of all time, which, one, dumb goals.
Yeah, not a good goal.
Two, definitely not achieving that goal.
Right.
But I think like that was one of the notes that I have a little further down here, is that like complexity doesn't necessarily equate to realism, and I think a lot of people kind of make that mistake when they're looking at game rules.
Yeah.
Where like the level of complexity, you don't have to do physics in your role-playing game to make it externally consistent.
Right. Okay.
And so, yeah, I just kind of wanted to get into like how complexity works and how it impacts your gameplay in different ways.
Okay, I'm on board.
So,
let's do it.
All right, cool. So how complex is your game, Josh?
Not particularly. I have said before that I run a Saturday morning cartoons version of D&D. So I strip out all of the stuff that I feel is needlessly complex. I understand a lot of it is like optional rules already, but like I don't care at all about things like tracking ammunition or encumbrance or rations or whatever, like supplies in general, until it like actually matters narratively, like crossing a desert or something. But other than that, I don't care. I don't care at all. You have a million arrows, they all magically return to your pocket. I don't care. It's not interesting.
There's nothing more narratively intriguing than spending a half hour plucking your arrows out of your enemies and putting them back in your quiver after cleaning them.
Yeah, and if you didn't explicitly tell me that you were going to be doing that, then I'm going to assume that you're out of ammunition because you're bad at your job. Yeah.
Yeah, but what is it that you are looking to achieve by not utilizing those particular rule sets? Like, is it just a streamlining effect for you, or is there like something more?
It's streamlining and player engagement. There's a specific type of person who cares about that kind of stuff. I don't want to play games with that person.
Okay.
I feel like it's just like essentially homework to track stuff like that. And I was never a kid who did his homework. Let me finish my thought. I would come in and I would excel at the tests. I would ace every one of them, but I was not the kind of person who would like show his work. I just knew the answer. All I wanted to get to was the answer. So I've kind of brought that approach to my role-playing games. I don't need the details. I just want to get to the correct answer. The correct answer is fun, right?
Right. So you have ADHD. That is absolutely how every.
I understand.
Yeah, every ADHD kid approaches school in the same way.
Yeah.
Just I didn't do my homework, but now it is like the day the homework is due, and I am going to crank out a 1,500-word essay while sitting at my desk, and nobody can stop me.
Right.
Because I don't have to hand it in until the end of class.
We don't need to re-diagnose me every week. It's fine.
I mean, you haven't actually been diagnosed yet, so...
No, that's true. I don't have a legal diagnosis, but I know what's wrong with me.
Yes.
And everyone who listens to this podcast does too, because I just
yes.
continually remind them of the weird things that I did.
This has been very personally illuminating.
Yeah.
Gosh, this podcast experience. Yeah. So
it's been reinforcing.
Right. For me, like, I also don't necessarily get down with those nitty-gritty rules very often.
Right.
I will utilize them if I feel that they are in some way necessary. So, like, one of the things that we're going to be doing in my campaign right now is we're going to space.
Okay.
And the first chunk of space around Eberron is the doldrums.
Okay.
It's just like the big empty nothingness for a very long time.
Right.
And so keeping track of your supplies and finding ways to survive and like finding food and making sure that you have enough arrows, because if you shoot them off into space, you're not getting them back.
Right.
That is going to be narratively important.
Yeah, that makes sense.
What we're doing. For me, like the complexity of the games that I like the most, I'd say is about the range of like somewhere between 3.5 D&D and 4 D&D.
Okay.
Right. I feel that 3.5 D&D had a bit too much complexity.
Okay, yeah.
And by complexity, like just so that everybody's on the same page, I mostly mean like the number of rules interactions that can happen over the course of a session.
Right.
So like a really good example of an overly complex rule from 3 and 3.5 was their grappling rules.
Okay, yeah.
Right. It wasn't just a straight athletics check versus athletics check. It was a... Let's see if I can remember these rules, because they are arcane and weird. It was a touch attack versus the touch AC of your opponent, and then an opposed grapple check to enter the grapple. And then when you were grappled, you were able to do certain things. Like you couldn't move. I don't think you could attack, but you could do some other things. And every round you had to make like a grapple check opposed to try and get out of it.
Right. You've already like
minor.
I'm so gone. I'm so lost.
Yeah, it's dumb.
Yeah.
It's too much. It was like too many interactions of too many like esoteric rules. Because like first off, you have to know what your like touch attack bonus is. You have to know what your opponent's touch AC is.
Which like why would that be different than your regular attack?
I think because it interacted differently with some spell effects.
Right, but like that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Like why does that need to happen?
I actually kind of miss touch AC.
Okay.
Because like touch AC didn't take into consideration your armor. Right. It was just like,
but why?
Can
like,
I touch you?
Yes.
Well, for like,
but guess what's on me when you're touching me?
For like spell effects.
My armor.
So like if the spell has a range of touch, your armor doesn't count for that, right? Because I just need to touch you.
Why not?
Because I just need to touch you.
I know you need to touch me, but like AC is more than just like, did you hit me? It's like,
well, exactly, and that's why it's just your armor that doesn't count, right? So like your dexterity counts, all of that other shit, right? Like, but that's the thing, right? Like it's overly complex when broken down like that.
It is infuriatingly complex.
So like the things that I did like in 3.5 were some of the rules that allowed for more customization.
Okay.
So things like the gigantic list of feats.
Oh,
3.5 had just like a tome of feats.
Chris is a feat guy.
Fuck, what was that like skibbity toilet ass animation thing that we were watching? Let me spit on it.
No, don't bring that up. Kids, don't Google that.
Like skill points. I was big into skill points where you could just like select how deep you wanted to go into any particular skill. It was less efficient.
Yeah.
But you could like just throw 1 point into a performance skill.
Right.
Right. And instead of being like proficient or non-proficient, it was just like, I have played a lute before. I know how to play a lute. Right. I'm not going to be penalized for playing a lute. And that's just like a little bit of like seasoning on my character a little bit.
Yeah. Right, what are their lutes?
I liked a lot of that stuff. But I also really liked how 4th edition would kind of drag you through character creation and progression.
Yeah.
Where it was just like, here's the stage you're at. Here's 3 options. Pick one and go.
Yeah. It was very much like, let's get you rolling dice, you idiot. Like, let's not... The game is not played by yourself, just, hanging out, whatever. Like, we've got things to do and places to be.
Mm-hmm. And I would be willing to argue that, like, 4th edition in some ways was more complicated than 3rd edition. But they wrangled it differently with the way that information was presented.
Sure.
Right? So, like, a lot of the complexity in 4th edition came from the individual abilities that you had.
Yeah.
But all of those abilities were laid out in the ability descriptions. Right?
Correct.
So if you had your little card or whatever, you could very easily reference exactly what you were going to be doing because it was laid out exactly on that card. So there is that complexity there, but the amount of information that you're having to reference, the amount of information that you're having to remember is going to be reduced because of
Right. Plus, they also, like, I don't want to say they held your hand, but they definitely made an effort to, like, help accommodate, like, the complexity that's sort of natural to the game with a good, robust character creator that, like, plugged in all the different things and all the different source book options and then did the math for you and then was like, here's what you need to know. Just do this. Which, like, there's a big percentage of the community that is mad about that I don't care. Like, they're wrong. They're just wrong. Making the game more accessible to new players is a good thing.
It could just be, like, my own bias coming out, but I think now that people have had a chance to, like, rest D&D 4 for a while, people are coming around to it. Right?
Yes.
Like, the initial idea of D&D 4 pissed a bunch of people off because, oh no, they World of Warcraft did my D&D.
They made a change. They made one change. Oh no.
But then they turned around and catered to exactly those people. And the game that they came out with is deeply mediocre.
Yeah.
Right. Like 5th edition, when we were playing D&D Next back in the day, there were some innovations in there that I was actually pretty stoked about.
Yep.
And then they scaled those back to cater more to the 3.5 crew.
I don't know
like the old school Renaissance crew.
I was going to say, I don't know what it is about the OSR people that scared Wizards so much. Like, I don't know what sorceress power they held that made them care, like, at all about what those people thought. Because they, like, did they think they could win back all of them? Those people didn't care. They left, they're gone. Don't worry about them. There's more people who aren't them than there are them.
I think it was just looking at the present trend of where role-playing games were going and what was being popular in, like, not necessarily the mainstream. Like, the mainstream is always going to be whatever version of D&D is.
Right.
But the like the indie crowd was very strongly moving towards OSR stuff and was, like, loudly decrying the 4th edition movement. And then, like, the Pathfinder thing where, like, Pathfinder was like, no, 4th edition's stupid. We're going to go and do the thing we've always been doing and we're going to do it better than you. It ate their profits really hard.
Again, I don't know why they would care about those people. Like, money. Listen, if your end goal is money, there's more people who don't play D&D than people who do. If you're only focused on the people who are already role players, then you are taking like bites out of a limited and shrinking pie. But if your objective is to get the rest of the pie of people that exist in the world, there's so many more of them that you can attract. And yeah, just like focusing on like, well, here's my little sliver, and I'm going to retain as much of the sliver as I can. It's just, yeah, it's a waste of time.
I do think that was part of it, though, was that like at the time, the only real like actual play stuff that was popular was like Critical Role was just getting started. I think
it was Penny Arcade. That was
Penny Arcade and
Hack Inc.
The D&D with Porn Stars guy.
Oh right, yeah.
And like Penny Arcade had been pretty strongly 3rd edition for the time that they had been playing. They did make the switch to 4th, but like
when did Acquisitions Inc. do 3rd edition? What are you talking about?
Wasn't Acquisitions Inc. originally 3rd edition?
No. Acquisitions Inc. started with Chris Perkins introducing them to 4th edition.
Oh, neat.
Okay. Mike, like Jerry and Scott had experience in previous stuff, but a big part of like getting the whole Penny Arcade crew on board was that Mike had never played a role-playing game before, and what interested him was the accessibility of 4th edition. And then it turns out that awakened something inside of him.
Awakened several things, like the fact that he's now an avid fantasy reader is hilarious to me, having come from like old school Penny Arcade.
Yeah, right.
No, but like the I Hit It With My Axe D&D with Porn Stars crew was kind of the only other game in town.
Right, and they were doing a very different thing.
They were doing a very different thing, but it was a very big thing, right? Like the outreach that they had was kind of crazy compared to like the size of the operation that they had.
Well, and you used the right word there, because it seemed actually crazy to me. I never understood why people like regularly watch that show, other than just like, hey, she's attractive, I remember her from being naked on TV or whatever.
I think that was part of it. I think it was also just like the sex sells, right? Like you've got the shock value of like, oh, porn stars play Dungeons and Dragons. It's a sexy thing and a dorky thing, so I can laugh at these naked people.
Except like I watched it and it like was not a sexy thing at all.
No, and it also wasn't very good as far as like actual play stuff is concerned.
Yeah.
I mean, it occasionally had some, like Satine Phoenix, I think, always put in a pretty solid performance. Right. But I think that she understood that it was also entertainment media.
Yes.
Where the rest of them were just playing some Dungeons and Dragons, and I don't know if anybody's ever recorded their Dungeons and Dragons games, but it is terrible.
Oh, it's awful. I would never want to put what I do with my friends once a month on any sort of platform.
Yeah. But they were really, really heavily into the OSR stuff, and I think that they had kind of an outsized reach for that, and then like the rest of the old school Renaissance was like very loudly decrying 4th edition.
Right. Which, like, don't listen to those people. If you're ever making something and the people who are critical, like, get mad when you make a change, just ignore them. They are going to get mad at every change you make. It's not worth it.
But I think, like, what 4th edition did with complexity that was interesting is, like, I don't think that 4th edition was inherently a less complex game than 3rd edition or 5th edition. But I do think that it had better user interfaces. Like it had better UX design.
Yeah.
Which made it much more approachable.
Yep.
And reduced the like personal load of the complexity for the game. While also simplifying some decisions. Like the flowchart style of decision making, I think was really, really solid in that game.
Well, and what it did too is it understood that there needed to be some complexity to have like interesting interactions and gameplay in the future, but it did a lot of work to like bridge the gap between like I don't know what I'm doing at all and like, hey, I can design like my super complex 30th level character with all of his 900 feats and 7,000 daily abilities or whatever, right?
Right, that the rogue build that could kill Orcus.
Yeah.
That came out before 4th edition was actually published.
Yeah, when someone was like, "Hey guys, I broke it. Do you want it back?" Like, what? How?
And then they just published it as it was, like that.
Yeah, they're like, "That's fine. You know what? If that's the character you want to play, great."
Yeah, you made it to level 30. Yeah, I guess you just get to stab Orcus in the face an unlimited number of times.
Well, you know what? And I think that's actually the correct decision. Like, yes, there is a broken build at level 30, but there is a whole road you have to walk from level 1 to level 30. And whether or not, like, just because it exists doesn't mean you're going to get to do it, right? Yeah. Like, your DM has to walk you down that path, and if they're on board with it, great. Maybe they've designed their whole campaign around eventually facing Orcus himself, and you've earned, after like a year or two of regular gameplay, the ability to say, I stabbed Orcus in the face and it worked. Like, fine.
Shit, I kind of want to play that game now.
Right?
Like, have a rogue paladin multi-class that's just like, I am going to vow of vengeance this fucking Orcus guy until he's dead.
Yeah.
Plus sneak attack. Stab.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, I love that.
But yeah, like, it's fine for broken things to exist in a complex game. Because whatever. Like, again, people forget, like, none of this stuff just, like, appears, you know?
Well, I feel like the more complex your game is, the more it opens the game up to gamification.
Yes.
Which, like, seems like a silly word to, like, use for this, but it's just like, when you're sitting there trying to figure out fun ways to break the game,
yeah,
you can't do that unless there are enough rules for you to be able to do that.
Yes. Yeah.
Right? Like, min-maxing can't exist without a complex system.
Yeah. And one of my, like, biggest defenses of 4th edition, as much as people are like, oh, it's simplified things, I'm like, did you actually look at how many, like, crunchy source books they put out for this game with more and more options and options? That's a huge level of complex interaction from, like, day one to talk about, like, here's all the basic stuff from your class up to level 30, but then here's your Paragon Paths, and then here's your Epic Destinies, and those can all layer on top of each other in an infinite number of combinations. Plus, here's all the different races that you can pick, because we keep adding like 3 or 4 more races with every book. Like, it had a huge amount of, if you really want to, like, crunch down an interesting character, cool. Maybe you will never get to play them to their full potential, but, like, there was a lot of cool things going on there. It was not simplified.
No, and the fact that they only broke the game several times, I think, is a testament to how well designed the system was.
Yeah.
Like, it was broken. Like, let's be perfectly honest. There were a lot of ways to break 4th edition D&D, but, like, anybody who looks at 5th edition D&D and thinks that that's a vast improvement,
they got something to sell you.
Yeah, they haven't done any of the math on that at all. No, and, like, I kind of want to talk about Lonely Fun.
Okay.
So this is a thing that I've talked about a couple of times, where, like, that there's a part of game design that involves you engaging with the game when you're not playing it.
Okay.
And complex games enable that, where you can just sit down and pore over these books and, like, learn new rules and new spells and new, like, what does this feat do? And how do these skills work together? And, like, there's so many different bits and bobs that you can go through while looking at the game that allow you to continue to engage with the game, even if you're not actually playing it at that time. Like, comparing different builds, right? Like, sitting down and, like, putting together a bunch of different builds for fighters is not going to be a lot of fun if the only character options are you get to pick 3 things, and those are going to be the things that you are good at.
Right. Or, like, so I've dabbled in the Paladin sphere a lot in 5th edition. All of your significant choices about what kind of Paladin you want to be and, like, do happen by level 5.
Right.
And then you're just kind of locked in down this path. Like, you want to talk about lonely fun? 4th edition was by far the most lonely fun I've ever had. So much lonely fun. 5th edition, I play it a lot and I do think about it, But I don't have Lonely Fun. Not once have I sat there and been like, boy, I should brew up a potential character. You know, like I've thought about like general character ideas. Like I sent you some of those goofy ones the other day where it was like, like a sentient hat piloting a mannequin. Like,
yeah.
But all of that is like just me thinking about a dumb concept, and then the mechanics of it are going to be the same just about every time. Like
I have been seeing a ton of Ratatouille memes.
Oh yeah,
recently, and I absolutely want to make a Ratatouille character that is just like a rat under some guy's like huge, like turban helmet.
Yeah,
that is like piloting a dude.
Yeah, but and like all of this has come because of like all of that idea had nothing to do with Dungeons and Dragons. It was me remembering a CBC kids show about a mannequin that came to life after the department store closed. And I was like, oh yeah, what if that was like a character, kind of? How would that work?
I think I can hear the jingle in my head, but I don't know the words. Harriet's Magic Hat?
Today's special. Come join the fun. Yeah.
Oh, Canadian Kids TV from back in the day.
Yeah. But that's just it. Like nothing was inspiring about 5th edition because it was just like, let's dial everything back to the vanilla, and then maybe we'll put out a couple of source books once in a while. And none of them were like really complex.
In the same way that it seems we always have to reference what's going on in the actual play sphere, I have to admit that the most lonely fun that I have ever had with a role-playing game was playing Palladium games.
Oh.
It can't happen again.
The villain. Yeah, okay. All right.
But it's just like,
go on.
Rifts has everything.
Yeah.
If you can think of a thing, there is probably a version of that thing in any one of the 70 bazillion source books that exist for that game.
Sure.
And like poring over those and like reading just like a little snippet about like what's going on in Lemuria.
Yeah.
Right. Like there's a whole fucking book about Lemuria.
I don't even know what that is.
Right? That there's an entire Australian source book that you can go through that has like Australian magic and dream spaces, and then also like along the Sydney coast, all of the different cool kinds of power armor that you can buy.
Okay.
And like what's the difference between an Australian dragon and a North American dragon versus a European dragon. It's detailed and complex to a fault.
Okay.
Right, like that there's too much going on in Rifts. And also not enough with the system. Like the system was designed in 1984 and it shows. But like the fact that they just keep building on it and putting out new stuff is what sells that game to people.
Yeah.
So that's the most lonely fun that I've ever had, is just like a pile of Rifts books on a Denny's table at like 6:30 in the evening with too much coffee.
Denny's has definitely seen just some weird nerd stuff a lot. Like I remember we used to like go there after like Friday Night Magic and just bring decks and decks, and like some poor middle-aged waitress would just see like 6 weirdos in the corner, because we would specifically ask like, don't sit us near other people. And then we'd be playing like Commander or something while waiting for a Grand Slam Witch.
We're gonna be weird.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be weird. Yeah. Yeah. No, for going back to Stettler for a minute, it was actually Smitty's.
Oh yeah.
There was a Smitty's restaurant where me and my friends would sit and drink entirely too much coffee. And while 2 of my friends were playing that game where you try and flick a creamer between like somebody's fingers.
Oh yeah.
I would just be poring over Rifts books.
That's wild.
Yeah. Just a whole different lifetime.
Back before you had phones and the internet.
Right? And then we would talk about it, right? Like we there were always those like big discussions that would happen when like people who were playing the game would get together. And I think that's another thing that Complexity does, is like it invites discussion.
Go ahead.
In a way that a simple game can't, because you don't have the same kind of sticking points, right? Like you don't have those pins to put into like, well, okay, so if I took this feat and this thing, then maybe I would get to do this, and then somebody across the table would be like, okay, yeah, but this would happen instead.
Yeah.
Right. And so you get those like crosstalks, and people start like theorizing and like theory crafting about.
Well, I was going to
so
say,
touch points on it.
Like talking about like Magic the Gathering, you've got 100,000 different cards. People can sit there and ramble for hours about like theoretical decks and theoretical combinations and, you know, optimizing A and B and X, Y, Z and whatever, right? Like that's realistically what they do.
Complexity. Talk about complexity. That game has a 500-page rulebook.
Yeah.
Like, it's enormous.
Yeah.
So like, and that's the same thing, right? Like I feel like Magic the Gathering offers a lot of the same complexity points that we get out of some of the most complex role-playing games out there, where it's just like, yeah, there are so many different combos, there are so many different things that you can do, so many different ways that you can play, so many different deck archetypes, the rock paper scissors nature of like aggro versus combo versus control, right? Like all of that is directly related to how incredibly complex that game is.
Right.
So has its downsides though.
Oh, for sure. For sure. I mean, obviously the biggest downside would be like accessibility and approachability.
Right.
There's a lot of these games that we love that just wind up having they seem impenetrable from the outside, and they need evangelists, essentially.
Evangelists, and also like patient coaches.
Right.
Like, because the nerd community is full of people who talk about how awesome a thing is,
right,
in a way that is incredibly intimidating.
Yes.
Right, where it's just like, oh yeah, you're gonna love this game because you can play this card, which is really cool, and then this card after that, and if you tap both of them, then this weird thing happens, and you're like, cool, I still don't actually know what happens on a turn.
Yeah.
Right, so you're telling me I should tap some stuff. What does that mean?
Yeah, what and that's I think the biggest thing is that, like, you know, we do it in this podcast because we understand our audience, but like there's so many default jargons that pop out in the nerd sphere that you don't even think about. You don't realize like where they originated from, because they've like crossed over to so many other things that you're already interested in. Like just like you said, the word tap, like what does that actually mean? Like, it's, without revealing too much, it's literally like in the name of the place I work. And outside of like we had an old name that was even worse, because it was like because it was a longer form of that. So I will say we have improved, but we used to be called Taps for Effect, which like nobody outside of Magic players has any idea what that means.
Right.
And nor should they.
Well,
it's specific to that game. Right?
Yeah. And I think like I'm definitely worse for this than you are, where it's just like I'm doing that thing where like that XKCD comic talks about like how the average layman probably doesn't know any crystal matrices except like the 3 core ones. Oh, and quartz. Right. Like, I don't know any of those things because I'm a fucking layman, but because I've been in this for so long, I forget what is expertise and what isn't.
Yes.
And so yeah, I'll sit around and talk about like shared imagined spaces and like Lumpley theories and listen to your eyes glaze over because I can hear it.
Well, and that's just it. Even with me, like I am in these spaces, and you say some of that stuff sometimes, and I'm like, I don't know what he's talking about. Like I don't know.
Yeah.
I just my survival mechanism is to just manage to just dodge my way through conversations based on context cues. So
yeah,
I was like, yeah.
Throw out a bit.
yeah. Wait till he's done. Say yep, Which also I have to stop doing that. I've been listening to our episodes and I hate myself.
I can hear myself going all the goddamn time.
Yeah, I hear myself go, yep, and I'm like, don't do that, Josh. Like, you don't have to agree with the thing he just said all the time, which is also like annoyingly hammered into me from like good active listening skills as a manager of people, but
right.
that's a whole other problem.
And also improv and
like, yeah.
Just all of the things lead to just like randomly agreeing to stuff and being like, yep,
yeah,
yeah.
It's bad.
No, but like,
anyways,
I know how bad I am for it.
Yeah.
But it's really hard to know how bad you are for it if you've never actually examined it before.
Yeah.
So like the barrier to entry isn't just the complexity of the game, it's also like the complexity of the social situation around that game.
Correct.
Prep time for complex games is so fucking hard, because like in order to be able to properly prep for a game, you have to put in the time to make sure that your stat blocks are correct,
right,
that you have like all of the rules that you're planning to use are actually like working in line with one another, that the challenges that you've put together are actually like in accordance with the rules. And for a lot of it, like if you've been in it for a minute, then a lot of it is going to be second nature, where it's just like, yeah, I know what DC this thing should be just off the top of my head because I've been doing this for a while. But if you haven't yet, being a DM for the first time is a nightmare.
Yeah, and I've watched people struggle through it as I talked about like evangelists and stuff like that. I just naturally have those tendencies in my hobbies. But it's something that I've like been a lot more intentional about, like especially at my job now and stuff like that. But watching people struggle through that that first time of like DMing something that you're passionate about but not 100% familiar with, and then just seeing like the frustration build as they're like, oh yeah, I've got to look up yet another thing I can't answer off the top of my head, and this night is actually taking a lot longer than I thought it would because I haven't been able to flow things correctly, and they have this like idea in their head of how the plan is going to unfold, and it just doesn't, because once again they didn't anticipate like something specific, especially like if they're playing with more experienced players who like do take advantage of some of those weird little rules interactions and stuff sometimes, and you're like, oh, I didn't know that was like a thing you could do. Like if it was your first time DMing and you didn't know silvery barbs was a thing, and then
oh shit,
yeah, and then you're like, I'm going to use my ability of my my antagonist here, and then it's like, no, you don't get to do that. It's like, why don't I get to do that? It's because, well, my whole character, like the character I'm playing, is based around not letting you do what you want to do, right? Yeah. It's like, oh, well, that's rude.
And then you get like the situation of like busting out the player's handbook or whatever source book it is you need to double check a rule all the goddamn time.
Every 10 minutes,
I have simplified that a little bit by being able to ask ChatGPT or Google for the rules. And I'm sure that they're just teaching me D&D wrong now at this point. But like it has definitely streamlined that process for me a bit. But like having to crack open a book and reference a thing in the middle of a game is brutal. And only a symptom of complexity. Yeah. Like if it's a simple game, then the rules are going to be very short and sweet, and you're going to have mastery of them very quickly. And not having to look up a specific effect is going to be more common. Yeah. So. Do you play a lot of simple games, like a lot of simple role playing games?
No. So outside of Dungeons and Dragons, I basically do not play role playing games.
Okay.
Just straight up.
I do.
Yeah.
I play, like we did 4 one-shots.
Okay.
We didn't end up doing the 3-shot.
Yeah. That's okay.
You memed me out of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, we ended up doing three one-shots, and the rules for those were all very simple.
Sure.
Probably my favorite of them was the bear heist.
Okay.
Where you have a number that is your stat, and if you roll above the number on 2d6, then you fail, And if you roll lower than the number, then you succeed. And if you succeed, your one of your numbers goes up by 1.
Okay.
And if you fail, the other number goes up by 1. And the only 2 stats are bear and crime.
Right.
So if the not bear stat gets up to the very top, then you just become a criminal.
Okay.
And you're no longer a bear.
Okay.
And you stop acting like one. And if the bear stat gets too high, then you just go savage and kill everybody and run away.
Okay.
That's the whole game.
That seems really straightforward.
It is really, really straightforward. Guess how many times I had to look up the rules?
100.
0 times.
Oh. Sorry, I didn't give you enough credit as a competent human being.
No, it's fair. Before that, I had to memorize them. So I guess there was the 3 times I had to read the rules to memorize them.
Right. Okay. That's still a lot less than the 100 number I just threw out. So
yeah, a little bit.
I'm sorry for that.
But the problem with a system that simple is that there isn't really a ton of room to play with it.
Yeah.
It isn't much of a game.
Right. It's an experience.
It's some guidelines for doing improv with your friends.
Right.
And I found that, especially towards the end of the session, and it ended up being a 3 or 4 hour session, I was running out of things to do with the system.
Yeah. You could do crimes.
You could do crimes, or you could do bear.
Yeah.
And there's only so long that both of those things are fun.
Yeah.
And there was some other stuff that came with the rules. You can download the entire game for free. It's 1 page. But a lot of the system that was written out was a random generator for the situation. So where the convention was being held, who the special guest was,
right,
the personality of the guy that was running the convention, and there were little tables for each of those things. That took up about 2/3 of the page.
I hate that. I hate that so much.
And because you hate it,
I strongly dislike that.
Is it just the random tables, or is it the focus on those aspects?
The fact that that seems to be the whole game is just some random tables, hoping for the best.
It wasn't even really hoping for the best. All of it was designed around creating a unique setting and
right.
backdrop. So we ended up with a particularly greedy guy that was running the HoneyCon.
Okay.
And the special guest was a particularly attractive bee.
Ew.
And it was being held at a summer camp for kids.
Okay.
On a lake. And those were the random things that I rolled up before we even started playing.
All right, I guess.
But again, that's a huge chunk of the game is those random tables.
Yeah, so it makes it's not a game. What you've described is not a game.
Not really. A lot of it was much more determined by the narrative, right?
Right.
It was a lot less about the system than the narrative that we were running for it. And nobody really got to create a character. Character creation is also random.
Ugh.
You roll for your type of bear, and then you roll for your hat.
Ugh.
I can tell you're taking that don't agree with Christopher train real serious right now.
Listen,
your response being ugh.
Stop saying such disagreeable things.
Yeah, but in some ways I feel the narrative, the lonely fun part of it would be writing a 30-page backstory for your character.
Why would you do that? It's a bear.
Well, I mean, you wouldn't for this game, but for a lot more simple games,
right.
Especially if it was going to be something that was longer term, then that's where the Lonely Fun would be coming from.
Right, but
if
like
you're gonna have Lonely Fun at all.
In what universe is a less complex game like inspiring that amount of Lonely Fun? I just don't see it happening.
Again, it's narrative Lonely Fun. It isn't game-based Lonely Fun.
No, I understand. I understand that the Lonely Fun is narrative, but
yeah,
like nothing is inspiring that narrative because there's nothing to like chew on. Does that make sense to you? Like, why would I put any amount of thought into something that's just not sparking the imagination at all?
I guess for me, it's let me tell you about my character. Right, like that's the motive that comes from that style of Lonely Fun. Is it isn't so much like the game has inspired me to do a thing as much as like I'm writing a novel about this character I came up with that I am shoehorning into this very simple system.
Right, but and that's like what I'm coming back to is like if your character can't be particularly complex and you don't have much control over them, especially in that game, because like you said, they're just random gen. There's like, what is there for my brain to chew on, right? Like, there's no like expressive options for my creativity other than just like other than just like a determination to make a backstory for a character despite the game designers and authors' best efforts, you know?
Right. I think the only like choice that came out from the random generators was 2 characters rolled pandas, and so they decided to be a father and son duo.
Great. Nothing in the game even suggested that was a possibility.
No, other than you can both roll panda.
Yeah. Other than panda can come up on the dice. Great.
But like, the barrier to entry is basically non-existent.
It's true. It's true. You could very easily run anyone you want through their nothing game.
We could run Bear Heist literally right now.
Yeah.
We're not going to because we're not an actual play podcast. But
imagine if that was our transition to actual play. We can run Bear Heist right now.
Can we do that for like our 100th episode? We're just gonna play some shitty 1-page RPG. We'll get like a couple of guests and we'll play like a shitty 1-page RPG. For an hour.
For our 100th episode, we can play Paranoia.
Okay, so for episode 50, let's do a shitty 1-page RPG.
Oh, okay.
Because I really want to run you through Paranoia because it's so bad and you hate it.
Yeah. Sure. Episode 50, Bear Heist. Accidentally. No, you know what? Maybe... What's another one? Is Cobalt Ate My Baby a 1-page? Like, essentially?
No, it's a pamphlet, but I can get you a copy.
I actually went by their booth at GameCon last weekend and grabbed
Steve Jackson?
No, it was someone else who was publishing it.
Cobalt Press?
Yeah, Cobalt Press, that's the one.
Okay.
And so I just like happened to grab like a bookmark and a sticker and thought of you and had no interest in picking up the book.
No, that's fair. It's a small, silly game. Again, quite simple in its execution, but yeah. No, I think getting into actual play content with a stupid game that you don't like sounds like the absolute best way to do that.
It definitely sounds like our MO. Yeah, just annoy Josh.
Did I ever tell you about the time that I made my brother play League of Legends for like 6 months because he hated it?
No. I know we played it for a while because I kind of liked it, but I didn't realize you could like inflict League of Legends on people like that.
I also liked it, but my brother was streaming at the time.
Oh no.
And I was like, you know what would be fun content? Watching you fucking hate League of Legends for a while.
and so you made him do that for several months?
So I made him play League of Legends with me for several months, and he was like, this is fucking dumb, and I'm not getting any views off of it. And I was like, I know, but I made you play with me for like 6 months.
Yeah, but we bonded.
Yeah, we bonded through your suffering.
I love that you can inflict trauma bonding on family members. That's a good skill.
Hey, thanks for making it all the way through this episode of No Plot, Only Lore. If you're looking for more, you can always find us at noplotonlylore.com and on all the very best podcast platforms. If you like what you heard today, please share, rate, and review the show to feed my never-ending need for attention and validation.